Hello everyone, welcome to Art on the Creek. My name is Anne and we are in my home studio in Parker, Colorado, which is coming along. I'm organizing it. I've got some more furniture in here. I'll give you a little quick tour so you can kind of see the status of where things are. It's not yet where I want it. We've still got more furniture to build. Oh, this has just been quite a puzzle for me. Have you ever organized a space? I mean, really totally redone it? This is something that my brain really just can't even comprehend. I know that some of you out there love to organize, and I would love for you to come over and do my studio for me. But I will suffer through it, and I want to give you updates along the way. So I've got that planned for us today. I'll just do a little short tour to show you where things stand. And I thought we could have a really good time painting some poppies today. So let's get to it. Let's enjoy the early June weather, the beautiful flowers that are in bloom, and let's try and paint some oriental poppies. Are you ready? Here we go. I think the best place to start is to show you the pile of stuff that I still need to take outside. We still have one more dresser to assemble, so my husband's tools are still down here. This is my editing desk, and it is a mess. There's always piles of things going on there, but I've kind of got this set up the way that I want it. So this is from the camera's view, sort of in the back. I have my studio light and my new work table, which I really love. Let me come around here and kind of show you what I've got going on. This is just a dresser for storage, and I have more storage over here in this piece. And then I've got the shelves going on over there. That part is done. That part is really organized and finished. And this shelf probably has some things on it that will change. Here's the furniture that I got that I put together, and well, my husband put it together. And I'll have one there and one on the other side of my work table here. There's my art space and my work table. So I've still got plenty of room to sew and do all of those things. And right now, I want to show you how to do a little poppy. We had so much fun doing this morning. I think it'll be a good one for you. So let's get started. Here's our reference photo today. It is from Unsplash, which is a reference-free photo site. I also use Pixabay a lot of the times, and of course the best photo is one that you've taken by yourself. So if you have a photo of a poppy, please use that one. The reason I chose this one is because I love the pink and red, and I really enjoyed how there were so many poppies to choose from. So I've zoomed in a bit here on my iPad. You can see how it's kind of close in there. And the paint set that I'm using today is going to be the Da Vinci paints. This is just kind of a palette that I made up on my own, and the colors that I'm going to use today are Quinacridone red. That's this first one you see going down. I've got some Alizarin gold in here, not the red that I normally would have chosen. I think like a Pthalo red would have probably been a little more vibrant, but this one worked well enough. And then I've got a Quinacridone violet that I will mix in, an indigo, and Hansa yellow deep, and a little bit of phthalo green, and those colors will come in later. And I also used the nickel azo yellow to mix with that indigo to create a kind of a really deep earthy green. That's the fun thing about poppies. Their stems and leaves and buds all have varying levels of green, so this one would be a lot of fun. Now this is just going to be the way that I chose to do this particular painting. You can do it many different ways. You can add that background in. I wanted to leave it white, but you can add that background in. I did do some splatters here at the end, so you'll see how fun that can be. And yeah, there's a whole lot of ways you can do this. If you're a little bit intimidated by drawing these petals, I would say just to print this photo off in black and white and then trace it on a simple light box or tape it up against your window and then tape your watercolor paper over that and just trace that. So what I'm doing first is going in over my sketch here, and I'm using rough 100% cotton watercolor paper. The reason that I'm using rough press is simply because I had this half sheet cut from a 9x12 pad, and it was sitting on my desk and I wanted to use it. So whatever size you want to use or whatever type of paper, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry, whatever type of paper you want to use, then, you know, go ahead and do that. One thing I always recommend, though, is if you are a beginner artist, I firmly believe it is much easier to learn on cotton paper. If you're looking for some economical cotton papers to use, I've got some links in the description that, that will work really well. I like the Meeden and 100% cotton watercolor papers. Both of those are very accessible in price and easy to use. And I've also recently found a bulk grouping of pack, I guess, of watercolor paper that is 100% cotton. And you know what? It works out to be about 6 cents a piece, and I really like it. So if that's something that you're interested in, there will be some affiliate links in the description below, you know, so that you can check those things out. And if you do decide to use those links, I'm going to give you a huge thank you in advance, because at no extra cost to you, if you decide to make those purchases, then that definitely does go to help my channel, because I do earn a slight commission off of that. And it's very, very, very small. But it does help. Everything always helps. And what I do with that money that I gain from working here on YouTube is to continue to purchase supplies, so that I can continue to make art like this for you, and make improved technology for my studio, working on getting some more lights and perhaps a different camera. Right now I'm doing everything from my iPhone, and I would like to be able to have a camera that is a little more of a permanent fixture down here, so I don't have to worry about having my phone with me all the time. But, you know, that's just some of my studio goals, and I just wanted to share that with you in case you guys are wondering where the money would go if you do decide to support my channel. Another way that you could support Art on the Creek is by purchasing a membership to the channel. This is a lot like Patreon, except for it's right here on YouTube. So I have 3 different membership levels, and there is a link in the description that will tell you more about these, so that you can decide if it's something that you want to do. It's just a simple monthly fee, and you can cancel anytime. And the different levels of membership will offer different features, some of which are free art supplies. So if that's something that you're interested in, entering a drawing every month for some free art supplies, that is something I do, because as a teacher, I really feel that it's important to let people experience art. And a lot of times that's prohibitive, whether it's your budget or your location, anything like that. It can be really difficult to get art supplies sometimes. So I really would like to be able to help you do that. And that is something that I do for my channel members. So if that interests you, go ahead and click that part of the description below, and you can read more about that. The color that I'm using now is Da Vinci's Alizarin Gold. Now, I also have a link down there for Da Vinci watercolors, because I absolutely love them. They are so translucent and so easy to layer. When you water them down, the color just seems to get for me, to be the right level of pale, so that I can continue to build layers and really build subtle shadows in my work. And for me, the way that I paint, the way that I really love to use these watercolors, the Da Vinci watercolors just cooperate very, very well. I don't have any trouble re-wetting them, and I live in a very dry climate. I do like the honey-based watercolors for that reason, but these, I really think they're just a little bit more translucent. So if you're looking for something like that that's really highly transparent and very easy to layer, I do recommend the Da Vinci. The rough watercolor paper that I'm using happens to be Arches. Like I said, it was just a cast-off half sheet from a piece that I was working on earlier, and I just wanted to fill this out. So, you know, never waste anything in a studio. Always use whatever you can. So the 2 colors that we're seeing so far are simply the Quinacridone Red and the Alizarin Gold, and you can kind of see that Alizarin Gold dries a little bit like semi-opaque, and the reason for that is because it does have PY42 in it, which is yellow ochre. So there is a little bit of an opacity to it that just kind of gave this vibrant red. It just kind of dulled it down a little bit. Had I grabbed another palette, I probably would have used a brighter, clearer red, you know, like I was mentioning before, a Pthalo red, or some other kind, maybe just a straight alizarin crimson would have been wonderful with this, and mix a little bit of yellow in it. But the contrast is the point here. When we're all done, and the red and the pinks worked very well together to really convey the scene that I was looking to convey. So I was very pleased with that part. So in the time that it took me to put those first washes down on the red poppy, the pink ones have dried, and now I can go back. I'm still using that quinacridone red, a little bit thicker consistency here, creating the shadows. So you will notice that my drawing is not the same as what you see on the left. I have kind of squashed these poppies together. This is what I really like about being able to create your own scene. I could draw this exactly the way that I see it, but I didn't want to. I wanted it to be a little bit more compact, a little bit more squished together, and having more of these poppies touch. So I've brought this pink poppy here on the left up so that it is touching the red poppy. I've eliminated that pink poppy in the reference photo that's up on the upper right, and I've scooched the bottom pink one up a little bit closer so that it's touching this one here that I'm working on now. So you can do that. You have freedom as an artist. You can do whatever you like to do. You'll notice that I've switched my brush. If you didn't notice, I have switched my brush. I was using that Princeton Neptune dagger brush, but now I've switched to a number 8 round. This one is a Da Vinci Colineo. It is synthetic sable, I think. I'm not sure. I'll put some text at the bottom if I'm incorrect on that. But I love these brushes. I really think that they're easy to use, and you can see going in and doing some detail. This number 8 round really does give you a decent point, so that's quite nice. The other thing that was really fun about using rough watercolor paper for this is being able to do a lot of fun dry brush. When you use dry brush, especially if you are doing some shadows on something like this, where these leaves are so papery, I guess they're not leaves, they're petals, are so papery and really have quite a few shadows on them. By doing a dry brush move with your paintbrush filaments, what you do is you hold it kind of horizontally, and you'll see me do it here every now and then. Kind of hold it horizontally and then take that belly of the brush and just bring it across the very surface of the paper. And what that will do, I think I'm going to do that right here. What that will do is it just leaves space, just some natural space. So you can see how variegated and natural these highlights are looking here on this petal down here that I've just painted. And that's with that dry brush technique. Works really well on rough press watercolor paper. It'll also work for you on cold press. On hot press it's a little more difficult to do simply because the paper is smoother. So back to the steps to follow here. We're just going to go over all of the poppies initially with that first wash of a very pale pink. Now this is the same exact color. It's still the quinacridone red. I just have it in a little bit thicker consistency. And now I'm going in and adding the shadow areas. Now I am, once again, not following the photo exactly. I'm really just kind of having fun and let some organic things happen with my paintbrush here. That's the way I like to paint. I like to use the reference photos as a springboard and then kind of put my own spin on it and see what I can do to create it to make it really my painting. That's my style. That's the way that I like to do it. I'm not a photorealistic painter. If you are, please continue. I'm greatly enamored of your skill. I just don't have the patience for all of that detail, and I've decided that when I create art, I want to create it for me, for the way that I see things. And when I look at these flowers, I see the energy that is in the flowers. And that is what I'm trying to replicate here through my brush strokes. So hopefully that is conveying on camera, and you guys can see that you know, if you're intimidated by getting everything exactly correct when you're painting, you know, having it look exactly like the reference photo, art is a space where you can be free and express whatever it is that you want to express. And this is the way that I have chosen to create my art. So hopefully you can find some little gems of wisdom there. I'm using the quinacridone red to go over this alizarin crimson, and I really like the way that the crimson ended up showing through this quinacridone red, because it really gave this poppy back here enough depth and dimension to really kind of be center stage. Now I'm going to go over it again and have a little bit more, more shadow added to it, but we'll get to that point. What I wanted to do here is to establish that there are some different layers of red happening. I didn't want to go in right away with the purple, because when we look really closely at that shadow, It's a little bit more blue, but it's not necessarily purple. It does have some darkness to it, but it's not necessarily the same. So I wanted to go ahead, it's not necessarily a jump to purple rather. So I wanted to go ahead and add some of that Quinacridone red on top of the alizarin crimson, just to give that red a little bit more depth and kind of take away that flatness that the alizarin gold has with it, because it's got that yellow ochre mixed in. Hope that makes sense. Coming in with the third layer now on these 3 pink poppies that remain, I am just adding shadows, and I'm continuing to just use the Quinacridone red. I'm not going to go in and add any other colors on these, with the exception of, I think on this particular one, I'll add a little tiny bit of the Quin Violet and then the Indigo for the center. But what I wanted to do was to put a little bit less attention on these. So when you're painting your poppies, you've got your petals all drawn. You can just go over that very first wash, just make it solid. You don't have to worry about leaving space for the stems, because you can paint right over these sheer colors with the stem. You'll notice though that I am avoiding the stems on these subsequent layers, so you do want to be conscious of that after you get to that point. You can really see here how I'm working on this poppy, how that dry brush really goes to create a lot of fun texture. And then these lines up here, I decided I didn't really like them the way that the shadows went, so I'm just going to blend those out. And that's another great thing about watercolor. You really can change a direction and make some corrections. The only time that I would say it's really hard, because I know a lot of beginning watercolor artists get a little bit intimidated thinking, oh my gosh, once I've got this paint down, I can't change it. There's nothing I can do. You can. The thing to watch out for is whether or not your pigment is a staining pigment. If it is a staining pigment, and it will say that on the paint tube or on the description on your pan, it will be harder to lift it out. But if you do decide to change something or go in a different direction, you can definitely lift out pigments, because they are water soluble and they do reactivate. So you will be able to make some changes along the way. In fact, you'll see me do more of those kinds of changes as we go on. So just tapping in some indigo there for the center of the flower, and now I'm going to come over here and get some indigo shadows down on the center of this red flower here. It has a very interesting center, and I don't want to paint in that detail yet because I can do that on top of the green. But I do want to get a little border of interest with that indigo around. And here I'll come in now with some green. And this particular mix is the Hansa Yellow Deep mixed with a little bit of the Pthalo green. I wanted to go in with a very light, vibrant green at first, just to kind of map out where these stems are going. When you are working on stems or anything that's going to pass over something that's lighter, you don't have to worry about leaving space for it, like I mentioned, because that darker watercolor will cover right over what you need. Now, when you're making the shadows and that value gets a little bit closer to the green, then you're going to want to definitely leave space for those stems. So you do want to draw them in, but when you're first painting your flowers, you don't have to worry too much about leaving those exposed and unpainted. Just adding these 2 little buds at the bottom here and kind of filling in the stems. You'll notice on those buds that I only painted along the left side. I'm going to come in here with a wet brush, and it's just a damp brush that I've blotted off, rinsed off with clean water, and I'm just giving that watercolor in the buds a path to move. That's going to help give it a little bit more dimension and depth and establish that it definitely has a shape. Now, whenever this green is darker, it's a mix of the indigo and the nickel azo yellow. I wanted to add some warmth to this, and I'm still going in here with a little bit of that, the green. This is kind of the mid value of the green, and then we'll go in with a little bit of a darker mix. I have found that greens are really lovely if you can mix your own greens. I do like using a sap green or a hooker's green, but sometimes it's just easier to mix your own. And now I thought it would be fun to go ahead and go in with some splatters. So I'm just using the colors that are already on my palette. It's the Quinacridone red and that green, and I'm just splattering. If you're going to splatter, just be brave, be bold. Just make sure you've got a good juicy wet mix on your paper, on your palette rather, with your paint. And then you can go in if you don't like where those splatters fall, and you can just gently blot them off. That works best if your painting is dry before you do your splatters. So now that I've got those little features down and a little bit more energy to the piece, now I can go in and add some of this indigo to darken this up. And you'll notice on some of those buds where I splattered, some pink got in there. I really like that. I think that was a wonderful bit of serendipity, and I'm really glad that that happened. So these are the reasons I like to have fun with watercolor and to just splash and play around, because you just never know what's going to happen. And as soon as you can embrace that, I think watercolor will really be a good friend of yours as you're creating art. If you really try and control this paint and make it do exactly to bend to your will, at least what I have found is that that's a little bit more challenging. For me, it was much easier to discover what the watercolor wants to do and then to use that trait, that characteristic to my advantage. So that's another little bit of wisdom that I hope serves you well if you haven't discovered that already. Make sure at this point that your painting is completely dry, and then we're going to go back in and do a couple more glazes over this the poppy in the back. I'm using the Quinacridone red over it again, and you can see how that just makes that red really pop. It really makes it sing, and I just really love how that effect came out over this alizarin gold. So that turned out to be a really nice combination after all, even though I didn't have that pyro red that I was mentioning in the beginning on this palette. So you'll notice when I'm adding these shadows, what I'm doing is kind of a little bit of negative painting, really. What happens when you add the shadows in like this is it makes the petal standing on top of it, it makes that petal come forward. Whatever we have in shadow in our paintings will recede, and whatever we leave lighter will come forward. So that's how we can manipulate the shadows and highlights to create a three-dimensional piece. The colors that I've mixed now are the Quinacridone red and the Quinacridone violet. So I wanted to go ahead and get this shadow in here. Like I was mentioning before, it doesn't really go straight to a deep purple, so I didn't want to mix that indigo in. It still has plenty of red in it, so that's why I chose to mix the Quinacridone violet with the Quinacridone red, just to create these nice subtle shadows on this deeply intense red flower. Going around, still sculpting these petals out by adding shadows, and every time I've added a shadow, you can see the petal in front of it either comes forward or it stands up more. So that's kind of a really fun surprise too when you're painting, that the negative painting can just really help you create that three-dimensional artwork. I always recommend that you sign your work no matter how you feel about it. Go ahead and sign it and date it, and then walk away and come back and look at it the next day. You might find more that needs tweaking. You might decide that it's exactly right the way that you've painted it. I hope you all enjoyed this little demonstration of how I would approach painting poppies, and I hope you get some time to paint some poppies on your own this week. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful week. We will see you next time. Bye now.